So this video is going to cover a vocabulary resource, and the resource I'm using today is Zengengo. I previously used Zengengo as a comprehension resource, and while it is good for that, I feel that it especially shines when it comes to vocabulary instruction. Whether you're using this as a means of online or virtual teaching, or just as a virtual supplement in your classroom if your students have access to laptops or that sort of thing. So, as I talked about in the other video, this is the home page. I created a classroom, which is pretty straightforward. You just need to put in your name, put in students. We talked a little bit about using submission settings to invite students to the classroom and to change sort of the allowances you have for submissions, turn on anti-cheating software, that sort of thing. And then the gradebook. If you want a little bit more in-depth overview of these elements, you can go over to the Zengengo comprehension where I dove a little bit deeper into these elements. Here we have the assignments, lesson, and course. This is just a way to better organize and group the assignments that you have. You can group assignments to lessons and lessons into courses. So here, if I didn't have anything here, all of my assignments would pop up by this. But since I've created lessons, I can choose just to look at one specific lesson and it will target just that. So it's just a way to keep things organized, keep track of things better, that sort of thing. And then here we have all of the different assignment methods or tools, I guess I should say. So the first thing I'm going to start with is text to test. So if you wanted to give students a contextualized passage or maybe something out of a book you're reading and practice vocabulary using the passage, you can do that. So again, we give them a title. Media prompts, we can use this to input text, or we can use it to add images, videos if you want to give directions, audio if you want to link to different texts, that sort of thing. So I'm going to go ahead and put text here if I want my students to be able to reference it while they're answering questions. And then this sort of generates vocabulary and such based on the text. And it also helps with structuring sentences if you want to do with sentence grammar, which is a little bit outside of vocabulary, but still a useful skill if you wanted to utilize it. So here we'll click process, and then it'll give me some suggested vocabulary, and then also the suggested grammar. So I can choose which ones I want to test for, and I can also add custom words if I would like to. So for this one, I'm going to go with discrimination, and I would read, you can also modify the definitions. Again, this is used for all grade levels, so you might want to reword this to use definitions that better suit the grade level, use words that are more appropriate or easier to understand. So say I wanted to do discrimination, seamstress, refused, tired, and let's see, I'll go with pushed. And then you could also, if you were doing this in the context of a text, you could adjust the definition to match the text's definition, if that made sense. So I've selected the vocabulary I want to use, and if I wanted to, I could add custom words that I was specifically targeting, but for the purpose of this video, I'm just going to skip that part. I'll just select one of these. Again, I'm not really focusing on the grammar element. It's important to teach, but not really the focus of this video, but it does require that you select at least one. So after that, make sure I have all the settings I'd like, and I can save it. So we'll go ahead and see what that looks like in a student view. So I can clear this and then go down here and see the student view. So this is the text. It does give it to them in the beginning, but again, if I wanted my students to be able to reference it, I would just add it up in that media element. And then it gives students the passages with the targeted vocabulary. So they can click on the vocabulary, they read the sentences, they see the words in context, and then they can see the definition. So once they've reviewed that, it'll open up the assignment. So it gives a definition, and they have to click the word that matches the definition. I'm just going to click through this really fast so you can see. There we go. And then this is the grammar element. Obviously, I know grammar does tie into vocabulary. It's not exactly what I would target or use it for. I feel like there's better ways to teach it than with this resource, but it is good to see how you can structure sentences. Does this make sense in this order? That sort of thing. It just isn't as, I guess I would say, customizable as this website is. This one element isn't as customizable as I feel like it could be to make it really useful. But again, skill students need. Go ahead and submit it. And then, like I said, students get their results at the end. They can see what they got wrong, what they got right. And then you as a teacher can go back, view the submissions, and provide feedback if you would like to. All right, the next resource we're going to look at is Text Gap Fill. So this resource basically gives students a passage, and then they have to fill in the blanks of what word makes the most sense in that context. So there's a couple different ways you can do this. I'm going to go ahead and title it. And then for media prompts, since the point of this is for students to fill in the blanks correctly, you don't want to put the passage in that you're going to use. The passage will show up anyways with the words removed. For this, one thing that you can do, you don't have to, based on the level of ability your students are at and the response questions or the response method you're choosing. You may or may not want to add a word bank. So, say my targeted words are discrimination, and I could make a table if I wanted to. I'll go ahead and do that just so it's a little bit less confusing for the hypothetical students. So discrimination, I could do work. What's another word? Seamstress was another one of the words. Okay, so here's their word bank. And then you'll put in the passage that you're targeting with the words. And then this is the answer mode, so how students are going to give their responses. So when it creates a blank, they can either answer the response by typing it in, or they can choose from a drop-down list. You wouldn't really need a word bank if you were going to do the drop-down list. You would need a word bank if you were doing the typing. But just for the purpose of this, I'm going to use a drop-down list. Press OK. And then this is where you'll remove the targeted words. So since I'm wanting them to understand the word seamstress, I can remove seamstress. This also is not the perfect example. You might want to be able to allow students to use context to know which vocabulary words are correct, that sort of thing. Definitely don't pay attention to the content of the actual assignment. This is just an example of how to use the program. So again, I'm just going to remove the words that I'd selected. So I said seamstress, discrimination, work. Go ahead and pick that. And then there's also an auto remove option if you wanted to just do it randomly. I don't know why you would, but if you can think of some way to do that, that is an option. And then again, submission settings, save. So I'll go ahead and go in to this assignment and show you what it looks like. Okay, so we have the word bank up here, and then this is the drop down. So Rosa Parks was tired. She had blank long hours that day as a blank. So she had discrimination, she had seamstress, she had worked as a seamstress. She was tired of the discrimination. So again, like I said, not the best passage for this, but just to show you how this works. And then they would submit and they would get their feedback. The next few assignment types are pretty straightforward, so I'll just go through them pretty fast. This is the vocab test, and like it says, you put in a title. You can put the media prompt, but you don't really need a media prompt with this one if you don't want it, unless you wanted to add some pictures to support understanding, something like that. But it's not really necessary for this. And then this is pretty straightforward. It's designed to be a vocabulary test. So you'll add a term and you'll add a definition. So if I wanted to say tiger, an exotic cat with stripes. And then I could pick the question type. So if I want them to match, if I want them to type the definition, if I want them to speak the definition or dictate, I'm mostly focusing on these. And you can also add an image. So if you want to put a picture of a tiger, you could. So I'm actually not sure what that is. Maybe something to play around with. I won't go over everything in this video. If I wanted to add a few more terms, again, not an actual example, but there we go. I'll just quickly do this. Okay. Give it a title. And then I can change the assignment types. So let's say I wanted to do this one as matching. This one can be typing, matching, and then we'll see what maybe speaking looks like. I think speaking might be they have to hear it and identify it, and dictate might be they see the word and they have to say it, which are all oral vocabulary, listening vocabulary. Those are all important. So it's really neat to me that this website has those options. But we'll try this one. And then different scorings. Again, this is just options for submission, scoring, that sort of thing. So we'll save that. Oops. So because we're doing the dictate option, it had me pick a voice to speak it. So we'll go ahead and see what this looks like. So as you can see, there's just different kinds. That one was multiple choice.
See?
So again, this is hearing, typing. That would be really good, I feel like, for if you had planned to do an oral spelling test where you read words loud to students and they write them down, but for some reason you had online schooling that day or you couldn't give the test physically. This is a good way to do it online. And then another one of the matching. And then this, obviously, I just typed random letters, but it would give you the definition and then they would have to type what letter. So depending on your student's grade level, their ability, your expectations for them, you can adjust the test settings based on that. So we'll submit it and then it'll give us our scores. Okay, and now we're back at hit this one. The next one I'm going to show you is just the multiple choice. We talked about this option a little bit in the comprehension video. This resource is really useful for comprehension, this assignment type in particular, but it can be used for vocabulary too. So again, give it a title. You can use the media prompts if you'd like. And then there's different kinds of questions. So if you wanted to say what word means the same as this, use multiple choice. If you wanted to do multiple, say you wanted to do like synonyms, definitions, that kind of thing, or multiple definitions, you could have them check multiple. I'm not sure what you would use reorder. I'm sure people could get creative and use that, but you don't have to use that part if you don't want to. And then categorize, again, if you're doing something like synonyms, antonyms, if you wanted to do, types of vocabulary, say you were teaching about some specific content, say in science or social studies, and you wanted to categorize definitions or terms based in different categories. Say, I don't know, if you were doing something with biology, is it a cell, is it a muscle? I don't know. I'm just thinking off the top of my head. But if you had any categorization vocabulary, you could do it that way. But mostly I would think you would use multiple choice or check multiple. You can choose carousel, so only one question pops up at a time, or vertical so that they all show up in a line, kind of like a test. Again, you just click to add questions, and you can type your question, A, and then you would type in wrong answer responses, which is really good. I feel like instead of them just generating wrong answers, that you can type in your own. That way you can really specify if you want to gauge certain misconceptions. If you know students could make this mistake, if I put this in as an option, I'll see which students are consistently making that mistake, that kind of thing. But if you want to see a little bit more about how these different options can be used, you can check out the comprehension video. But again, just to have a couple of answers, I'll go ahead and do this one too. You put the correct answer below the question, and then other responses. And I'm just doing 4 because that's what I traditionally do, but you can do more than 4 responses. Save. Okay. And we can see what that looks like. Go ahead and open it up with the student view. And since I pressed vertical, all the questions show up at the same time. If I did carousel, I'd have to click next until the submit button came up. And there it'll give me the results. So those were some of the most useful tools on here for vocabulary, but I'll quickly go over how you might use some of the other elements for that. Audio recording requires students to respond with an audio response. They can record themselves. This might be useful again for oral vocabulary if you want to give them a list of words and then they have to read them aloud. Same with the video. Could you work the same way as the audio recording? Written report, I don't know that you would use that much unless you wanted to say, write 10 sentences using this bank of words so that students are actively using vocabulary. You might use that way. Speaking drill is just another resource for spoken vocabulary if you want students to practice saying things, that sort of thing. Video gap fill would be good for hearing and then writing. Kind of like we talked about one of the other, I believe it was vocabulary tests, where you could hear the word and then type it. This one is a little bit more complicated. Say you're teaching online, you would have to upload a video of yourself to YouTube saying the words, and then students would play the video. It would pause at certain points, and then they would have to type out what you said. So a little bit more complicated. I don't know if that's worth the hassle, but if it's something you're interested in, that is there for you. Aside from that, that is mostly it on the website. Again, you can go through here once you have more students. It won't show much for me since it's just myself. But once you have students, it'll tell you statistics, how students are doing, how often they're working, that sort of thing. Submissions can be viewed over here if you want to see comprehensive scores, that sort of thing. But that is Zengengo, and I definitely recommend just exploring it because I feel like it can be used for so much more than just comprehension and vocabulary, and honestly for so much more than just reading. You could maybe use it for other subject areas too, especially the multiple choice, the written response. It's just a really great resource to have for online teaching.